Welcome to today's Teagasc Options webinar. My name is Peter Doolan. I'm a Teagasc advisor based in Portlaoise, and today we're going to follow the same format as some of you may be familiar with, in where we talk about farm diversification. Today we're talking about farm diversification in County Laois, and I'm lucky to have three panelists with me who have diversified some of their farm enterprises in the County of Laois. Quickly to introduce them, we have Edna and John Phelan, who you will come see on screen shortly. You will be also talking to Kevin and Michael Phelan, and you will be talking to Thomas and Alan Phelan, also in Mount Rat, not too far away from Kevin and Michael. They will be talking about organic dairying, and we will be talking about a variety of enterprises. As you can see, there's variety both in the enterprise, on each individual farm and amongst the farms. So basically, just to give you a definition of farm diversification, farm diversification is where basically a farmer takes an idea or an interest and looks to see if it can generate income on their farm. In each of the cases, the farmers in question have taken an interest, I suppose, have developed it into an idea, and you can see there now that they are generating income. I suppose what may be unusual or what is good about the particular farms is that they do continue to have a core enterprise on farm, whether it be beef, sheep or dairying, and where this additional enterprise is generating income. It may be a lot or it may be part of it, but there are mixed farms. So just in general about County Laois. County Laois, I suppose, is the typical mixed farming county, in that if you go out any town of Laois, whether it be Abbeyleix, Mount Rat, Rathdowney, Portlaoise, you won't have to travel too far until you come across probably a dairy farm, a beef farm, a sheep farm, and probably a tillage farm. If you know what roads to take, you'll probably come into upland Comminage area belonging to sheep farmers, or probably into the deep malt and barley regions that we have in the county. So it's a county that always lended itself to mixed farming. I suppose that is on the basis of the good soils of the county. Not to say that every soil in the county is fantastic, it's just that there is a variety of soils that generally are better than average, which lent itself to having these mix of enterprises. In recent years, we've seen a large increase in dairy enterprises, and I suppose that's a reflection on some of the core enterprises, the beef and sheep and tillage, probably struggling to generate an income from family. I suppose it's been taken upon themselves, the farmers of the county, to look to see what can make money for them. That may be dairying, and in one case it was for one of our panelists. But for others who may not want or can or wish to go into dairying, there may be some other enterprises out there. So I suppose, I must say that Laois, I suppose when you think of Laois, you mightn't think of windswept beaches or large water bodies. It is a very central county with great road networks, and it's a case of been well able to host events, with two famous events being Electric Picnic and the Ploughing Championships, able to attract large crowds. And it's interesting that both are essentially have agricultural links. Our first speaker, I suppose, takes the disadvantage of being landlocked and turns it on its head, and also takes the advantage of road networks and I suppose its central location in being able to draw people in. And that would be Edna and John Phelan, based in Coolrain. So they're going to be our first speakers. And so I'm going to ask Edna to unmute herself. And I'm going to get a presentation on screen. This presentation, hi Edna, hi John, you can hear me okay?
Hi, morning.
So what I'm going to share a presentation for John and Edna, and this presentation really is a series of pictures, because pictures best describe what you're doing in Coolrain. There's also some other enterprises I'd like to talk about, but so bear with me now while I talk. So John and Edna, you are going to tell us about your farm enterprise. So I'd like you to introduce yourselves firstly, and I suppose you might tell us how you started and what you're starting at, and why you decided to go down that route.
Okay, well, we considered an alternative farm enterprise that would perhaps increase our profitability on the farm. We wanted to reduce our risk factor. We had most of our eggs in one basket, and we wanted to enhance our quality of life and indeed to reduce the workload on the farm. The next generation, our adult children, at this point in time, which is around 206, had finished university and were not going to be involved in farming. So we were keen to perhaps leverage our interests, our hobbies, into some project on the farm that would perhaps gain us some an annual or increase our income. And we assessed the tourism potential of some untapped markets in that area. So those were areas that we considered, and I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here now. Not
no problem. No problem. So basically, tell us about the farm, about what is actually on the farm today. So what diversification do you have?
So we have our portfolio with obviously our base farm. So then we have forestry, we have a fishing facility, and we have gardens open to the public. So I have a timeline. I'm not sure if you can see that. I can't see it now, but we were married in 1976, and at that time this was very much a big sheep farm that had been as such for generations, also with suckler herd and dry stock and some tillage, very traditional farming. So we farmed along there for many years alongside my late father, and in the 80s we planted a couple of small areas of forestation. That was our first dabbling, as it were, but the grants weren't all that attractive at that time. And that was in the 80s. In 1996, we bought an adjacent property of 43 acres and established a plantation thereon. And then moving on, I'm really disadvantaged here now, Peter.
Sorry about this, Enda. So basically, take us through the garden and maybe into the 2000s.
What I'm saying is we progressed on and we increased our forestry, thereby reducing our workload and subsequently reducing our livestock numbers. And in later years, leading on up to 2020, which is the last one I can see on the corner, we have started to lease out some land, and in 2020 we carried out a major project on our fishing facility to mitigate issues that we had encountered, which were climatic related, which I can refer to later. Now,
okay. Yes.
I want to talk about, I will go through these in a little bit more detail, Peter.
Okay.
All right. Any hope on my slides coming? Go.
So so basically we're looking at some sheep, some forestry, and now we're into your garden. So we have a lovely picture of you in your garden in Clonaghill, which is in Coleraine.
Okay, well, we continue with sheep. Our sheep numbers, just to refer back to the farm, as our sheep numbers have reduced to about 250. We have Jacob and mule sheep, and we cross them with Charolais Rouge Beltex rams. And that continues here, which is very traditional on the farm, and we're into our lambing season starting just about now. Now, in the garden, we were asked to open the garden for charity in 2010, and we did so, and it was hugely successful. There's a very growing interest in plants and plant collecting, and my background is in horticulture and landscape design. So it's my passion, so it's not really a lot of work. It's about 1.5 acres. Surrounding the house, we have woodland, we have Jacob's Walk, named after my late grandfather, Jacob Thompson. We have a lawn area with herbaceous borders, and we have a walled garden overlooking the lake. So we do a charity day at least once a year, for Hospice, Kidney Association and other charities. And it's given, certainly, it's enhanced our property, and it also gives extra value for our angling, added value for our angling fraternity, our customer base there. I enjoy sharing all my plant knowledge and enthusiasm with others. Now, so we move on to 2006. And in a little more of our garden pictures there, which I can't see, unfortunately. But anyhow, we move on to, that's the garden. It's a great passion of mine. Now we move on to 2006, when we did all the research into our diversification in relation to setting up Laois Angling Centre. And we had a 25-acre site, which were 2 fields parallel or adjacent to our then farmyard, full of springs, wet, low-lying land, not carrying much livestock. So we set about, we approached Laois Leader and had some wonderful help there in the form of a grant from Laois Leader and later a marketing grant from Laois Leader, and a lot of help and enthusiasm there for our project in landlocked Laois, as it were. Anyhow, we also had a lot of help from the IFI, the Inland Fisheries Ireland, who helped us a lot on the whole area of water quality and fish stock and supplies and all the technicalities involved. So the excavation work took part in 2006, and in 2007 we successfully completed all of that, having built a fishing lodge which seats about 70 people. And we opened in Easter 2007, and our fish are supplied from Raspberries Fish Farm, which is, a government agency. And we stock brown trout, rainbow trout, carp, and tench. And you will have seen, you will perhaps can see some of our slides here now of photographs of fish. And we have, I can see our piper here on the corner of my screen. I can just about see his kilts. But anyhow, that was a very big occasion we had in 2019 when we hosted the Four Nations International Fly Fishing Competition. And the piper, it's a tradition where the piper pipes the four teams down to the water edge. It was great for us here to get to host such an important fly fishing competition. And well, I think we were chosen really because we're the biggest stocked fishery in the country, and also with our hospitality facilities. We bring a caterer on site for those kind of events. So we host a lot of big provincial competitions, and we host the All-Ireland each year. We had a couple of, I mentioned problems that we had to mitigate there. They're related to climate change, believe it or not. And so some of our water areas are not awfully deep, so we have weed problems there. So we, and also the water not being awfully deep, maybe only 8 or 9 feet. In very hot weather, like in 2018, we had to close in the height of the season because the water temperatures were too high, oxygen levels were too low. So now we have addressed that by deepening most of the areas. And this work was carried out through the winter months, and it so happened with lockdown, we were closed and nobody was disrupted with any of that. But otherwise, the ongoing maintenance involves still perhaps a bit of weed control, maintaining the roads. The water is beautifully clear, and this, of course, causes the weed growth as well because it's all spring-fed, and the fish are very healthy, and I think we're quite known as a well-stocked, hopefully well-run facility. We certainly enjoy running it, and there's certainly a lot more money in fish than in sheep. Although when we spend thousands on fish, I don't see them. Whereas if we bought a few sheep, I might see them. But anyway, they're there and they're growing and they're all doing very well. But anyhow, to summarize, we have reduced our livestock numbers. We have increased by increasing forestation. We are now renting out 100 acres of land annually. We have about 180 acres of forestry, and we're both working to our sort of a his and hers passion. We have my husband, who is a very keen angler, and I'm working with my lovely plants in my garden. So we're enjoying what we have achieved through diversification, and we could only do what we did with the fishing because we had a suitable facility on our land with the springs, because you couldn't be interfering with the water course of a river like the River Nore or anything. So we had the facility, and it has worked wonderfully well. And this photograph there actually of the boat, I can see part of it. Yes, that's weed control, maybe about last year. It's a mowing bar that's on a telescopic thing that goes down into the water. And it all works very well. And being so close to the house, it's a gem, because I can be gardening, we can be about, we love meeting people now and sharing what we have. And we've had families from all over County Laois during the lockdown period that discovered us. And we have wonderful picnic and barbecue facilities and toilets and wheelchair accessibility. And it has enhanced our property, we think, considerably. And we certainly enjoy all that it has brought to us. So that concludes my little presentation, and I certainly hope you've enjoyed it. And we would be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thanks, Peter.
Absolutely, and John, sorry about that. So basically, anyone who has questions can type them into the chat function there. What we'll do is we can come back to you at the end and ask you some questions. I'm just going to ask you one or two questions there now before I kind of move on to the guys. Just quickly, who comes to Laois Angling Centre? Are they local? I know this is COVID times, but in general, what sort of people come?
Well, actually, Laois, Laois, there isn't a great tradition of fishing here in Laois. As you know, we're landlocked. But we get angling clubs that come from places like Dundalk. There's a very sizable angling fraternity in Dundalk area. And we get people from all along the Shannon bed, from Lough Derg, all the way up the country. We get people from Oughterard and Michael. They come here every Sunday.
Cork and Limerick.
Limerick. It's amazing. And we also get people in the winter time. We work in we're open all year, but we work, open weekends, weekdays by appointment. So if there's a lot of wind on the Corrib and you can't take out your boat, well, you can come here because it's sheltered. There's a forestry on one of the boundaries. It's low-lying land, So people drive 2-3 hours. If it's your passion, you'll travel. Golfers travel and other sports people travel all over the country. So, and then, of course, we have the lovely fishing lodge where we have a lovely big stove fire. The newspaper is there. You can tie your flies, talk fishing, have a cup of coffee, So it's a comfortable facility for people when they do travel.
Brilliant.
Sorry.
I'm going to have some questions for you at the end, but just one final question before I move on to Kevin. So, Kevin, you can be getting yourself ready.
Okay.
So, Enda and John, maybe John, you're remarkably quiet. So, what I'll ask you, John, is how important it is to have an interest in what you're diversifying into. Would it work if you didn't have an interest?
Not really, because you want to be able to cater for everyone. You want to be able to cater for. We have a lake for coarse fishing, and we have a lake for beginners with worms, and then we have a big lake with fly fishing only.
Your knowledge. Yeah.
So unless you know what you're doing, you'd have no fish after the end of the week.
Yep.
If you didn't watch it. But 99% of the people who come here are fishermen and they enjoy it. And as I tell them, if you want a bag of fish, go to Dunnes Stores. If you want sport, come here. There's two different, it's a sport, the same as the golf. What do you do when you put the golf ball into the hole, when you pick it out, and the very same with the fish on the fly, you just catch them, let them off, you can take home 2 with you, but you don't have to take home 22.
Yes, okay, perfect. No hassle. Look, John and Enda, thanks very much for that. We'll leave it there for the minute, and I'm just going to stop sharing your camera, and we'll go to Kevin. Kevin, can you hear me okay?
I can, Peter, yeah.
So Kevin is joined by Michael. So Kevin and Michael Phelan of Rose Cottage Fruit Farm.
So we are a fruit farm that started off in 1982, and my father Michael started growing strawberries basically as a way to make money in hard times. So we are farming some very marginal land that wouldn't be good for tillage, and it's not fantastic for cattle either. So started off with around 1/4 of an acre of strawberries, and it kind of just started growing from there. And over the next 20 years, we've kind of kept on expanding and getting into other fruits that we have. Blueberries, we expanded into blueberries, I'm going to say about 15 years ago, because as some of you may remember, they were a new super fruit. So we started planting blueberries, and went from a couple of hundred bushes, and at the moment we've nearly 4,000 blueberry bushes to produce at various times of the season. And we planted cherry trees so that we've a broad range of fruit that goes from strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, cherries, black currants, red currants, plums, rhubarb, so that when you're coming to buy something, that you've a wide range of things that you can get nearly all the fruit that you'd be looking for in one place. That's kind of what we're aiming for. So mostly, well, I'm going to say mostly, everything is grown under cover, because with the Irish weather, you can't grow outside. That you've so many issues, mostly the rain. Wind is definitely an issue. So here's some raspberries grown in pots last year. So like there's so many issues with this to get. Basically, when I was a child, the season was for 6 weeks, in June to mid-July. Now you're picking from the start of May to the middle of October. So it's gone from a very small thing to a very large part of what we do. So like here, for instance, we have raspberries that are grown under fleece to get them to produce raspberries in May, when normally you would not have raspberries till the end of June. So there's a lot of, I suppose, planning needs to go into what you're doing, that you are constantly planting to have a continuous supply, that when you have these raspberries that are picking in May, that you're also planting raspberries that will then pick in September. So there's a constant, I suppose, rotation of fruit to have a continuous supply. Our sales model is direct sales. We are either selling at our farm or we're selling at farmers markets. And here's a setup from our stall in Mahon Point in Cork. And mostly we sell our fruit in either Cork or Limerick, and kind of might go, why don't you sell closer to home? And I suppose the thing is, there's the population base in Cork. There's some very well established markets, and people are interested in buying fruit and veg that they know where it comes from. And that is something that we trade on, is the quality of our fruit, that how it tastes. That people would often comment that, oh, what you get in a supermarket looks great, but it doesn't taste very good. Whereas what we grow, we are growing for taste. Sometimes it mightn't look the best. You might have strawberries that are slightly knobbly, but people are eating it, not looking at it. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. Now, there's another market down in Cork, that's in Middleton. So back 3 years ago, my father decided that he wanted to put basically a stall at the farm. He had seen something similar at a grower in Kildare. And so we made up this stall, which is basically outside our house. There's enough space to pull up, and it's unmanned, that people just come, take what they want, and put money in the box. And it is something that has worked surprisingly well for us. That an issue that we would have had was people were coming to the farm and looking for fruit, and you could spend half an hour talking to a person and you're losing a load of time during the day. So it was a thing where I would not want to meet anyone. And this was an excellent solution, which has actually worked out quite well. And we also do jams and juices, which during the part of the year when we don't have any fruit for sale, there is jam and juice on the stall. Fruit that we can't sell, we freeze the fruit or make jam fresh with the fruit. And similarly with the juice, it's our fruit going into the juices. So there's something on the stall year round, and we've actually noticed like the winter just gone, that there's a lot more uptake on the likes of jams. Now maybe that's to do with people not being able to go anywhere, that they're going, oh, let's indulge a little. I'm not sure whether that will continue going forward, but it's I think it's good to see that it's something that's expanding year on year, and it's kind of surprised us how well it has done. And that particularly last year with no one able to go anywhere, we definitely got an uptake in business from local people who basically it was somewhere to take the kids, that to go and go get strawberries or whatever. But it is something that was very simple to set up, and has actually been amazingly effective for us. So that's kind of all I have to say, Peter. That's been nice and short.
No problem.
So,
no problem. Kevin and Michael there, thanks for that. That's brilliant. So just one or two short questions there, and actually there's some questions coming in as well, but just I kind of have an idea where you learned about berry farming. I suppose you learned it from Michael, but where did Michael learn from berry farming, or how did you get the skills? Because, you know, picking berries, they all have their art and skills, and even just learn about fruit growing, you know, being from a bee farm. How did you learn, or where did it come about?
Well, Teagasc and Clonroad were a big help, and when we'd go to Clonroad, we'd meet other producers, and everybody was willing to pass on information and the problems they had. And I suppose over the last 40 years, we just picked up things, yeah. Okay,
perfect. And just I suppose Kevin, there's just a question there about, I'll just read it out to you now for fear of forgetting about, but basically it's to do with your setting up the tunnels. Did you need plan permission, or do you need plan permission? Now you might describe how exactly your tunnels work, so they're kind of a movable feast maybe.
Okay, so we have a few tunnels that are permanent structures, and when they were put up, you did not need planning permission. And then pretty much everything else is Spanish tunnels, which are temporary tunnels that you can take them down. And that is often the case, that we are moving tunnels from place to place. I definitely know that if you're applying for a horticulture grant, that you do need to get planning permission.
Okay.
But other than that, no, they're a temporary structure.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Look, and there's a great question in from Helene.
Now, mileage may vary in different county councils.
Of course.
I will say that.
And we were talking about you have been set up in the 80s, as you say. So
yeah.
Yes. So basically, consult with your local authority about what permissions may or may not be needed. Great question in there. I suppose I wanted to ask myself. So basically, you're selling fruit from the road using an honesty box type system, but it doesn't matter what you're selling. It could be eggs. Someone could be selling rhubarb. Is there any issues, or was there any theft basically from it? You're in a semi-rural location. I just might add for people, you're on a main thoroughfare between Mount Rath and Abbey Leaks, so it's not quite, you know, it's not urban. It's not completely rural either. So
no. Well, there definitely is. We'd be kind of going. Let's say maybe 5% of stuff could walk. But I don't think that's a terrible ratio. Now, some of that could be down to, I've paid for this one thing, I'll take two. Do you know? We don't really know. But yes. I would definitely agree with you, Peter. Like, we're we are definitely not urban. If we were on the edge of a town, I'd say we'd have a lot more problems. But where we are, you have to drive to us. So honestly, I think people in general are honest, and they're not just going to come and rob you blind. So we haven't had any particular problems.
Okay. So that's brilliant. So look, I'm going to get Thomas and to just get right there. Thomas might be with Alan. So Thomas, you can make yourself visible now in a minute, and I'm going to thank Kevin. Thomas, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you, Peter. I can't see you there at the moment.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So Thomas, I'll just give you a little bit of introduction because you're well able to talk, and you're going to describe to us, I suppose, a system we can easily imagine, but just what quirks you've put on it. So Thomas, you're farming in partnership with your son Alan. You're in Foxborough, Mount Rat, not too actually far away from the Phelans who we just on beforehand. You're all the one, yeah. The Phelans are very enterprising people. I might add, none of the people on here are related, so the three families are not related. But look, it's just a quirky thing. So the Phelans in Foxborough, the Foxborough Phelans decided to diversify a different way. So Thomas, you might just tell us about the farm background, the family background, and what got it into your head there a few years ago, and what you're at today. Take it away, Tom.
Okay, Peter. Well, basically, like most farmers in Laois, we were a mixed farm back over the years. With my late father, we had practically everything from pigs, sheep, dairy cows, cattle, literally a little bit of tillage, every bit of enterprise you could imagine. I started farming in my own right in the early 90s, and at that stage, I suppose, it was time to streamline things a little bit. So this very small milk quota we had, while I had an interest and realised that milk was more profitable than the other enterprises, the milk quota was so small that I didn't think it was worth pursuing it. So we went into suckling at that time and got ourselves a big suckler quota for about 70 cows. And a sheep quota, if you remember these things. Maybe younger listeners don't know what I'm talking about. But over the years, I suppose, everybody can tell the same story. Returns from conventional beef and sheep farming, it just seemed to be diminishing all the time. And as the family grew, of course, demands for money, as most people are aware as well, was going the opposite direction. The single payment, when it was introduced in the early noughties, I suppose it was probably a bit of a reprieve because, it did provide stable income there for a number of years. But of course, as everybody knows, anybody who was lucky enough to get a high single payment, it has been down. I mean, I'm probably over the last 7 or 8 years, I'm probably down maybe 10,000 a year in my single payment. I would have also availed of the reps. The gloss is there now, but once again, it's not as good as the reps was. The disadvantage payments aren't what they used to be either. And of course, overall, we all know with inflation that, the same amount of money today it doesn't have the same money today. Doesn't have the same value as it had probably 10 or 20 years ago. So, I mean, I was always interested in dairying per se. I would have had a slight interest in organics, but not, it was never something that it wasn't a route I imagined myself going. But obviously, when we first heard that milk quotas were going to disappear, I always had it in the back of my mind, if Alan was going to be interested in farming, that dairying was the only way to go. So with that, from I suppose maybe 2010 onwards, I would have been doing some land reclamation and reseeding. So practically, we got nearly the whole farm reseeded during that period. I knew that investment in soils, fertility and reseeding was always, and land reclamation, it was always going to pay for itself. But of course, with dairying in mind, I was lucky to be in the position then that the farm was more or less set up. So then with the massive expansion that came in dairying and everybody seemed to be going that route, I became very aware of the fact that it's going to require huge investment, because everybody was talking about, where there was a time when a cow to the acre was the thing to aim for. Now a lot of people are stocking beyond that. People are going up to 3 and 3.5 cows per hectare. And I will admit that this wasn't something that I felt the most appealing. I didn't really, I'm starting to get on now myself. And the idea of actually heading into a couple of hundred cows wasn't, I'll admit, I would have felt it a bit off-putting. So I cannot actually say where I first heard the notion of organic dairying, but I would have been looking around maybe at probably entertained the notion of converting to organic beef and sheep as well. But we visited a few farms, and of course I was delighted to hear about this organic dairy farm. But I would agree to have having the impression that organics, and I think a lot of people are kind of fall victim to this, is that they think that organic farming is, what would I say, not conventional, not commercial, I should say. So when I went up, we visited a farm up in Westmeath, on the Westmeath-Offaly border. This is 3 or 4 years ago. And I have to say, I was amazed, because it was just like walking into any other conventional dairy farm. We learned we learned what the farm was about, what the stocking rates were, what his history was, and we could see that on a per hectare basis, he was about, or maybe slightly above, the national average in terms of profitability. But on a per cow basis, he was way ahead of the national average. That's when, I suppose, this appealed to me. Now, previous to this as well, into the bargain, I was always looking at what our farm was most suited to. And because of the nature of the farm, the land around the house would make an ideal platform for grazing. But across the road then, I have more marginal land. So I would have even felt over the years as well that it would have suited more a winter milk situation. Now, I know this is going against the grain for most Teagasc clients, because the idea is all about calving to grass and everything else. But I could see the advantage that with, in terms of having the cows dry during the summer, they could be taken across the road, where it wasn't easily accessible for a milking parlour while they were during the dry period, that is. And also, it would allow me to maximise stocking rate on the farm, on a whole farm basis. So our first move was to do an organic course. Both myself and Alan, we worked in a partnership at the time, but that didn't stop Alan completing his course as well. We did the organic course in 2016 or 17, I think it was 2017. But even still, things were still kind of on the long finger. And the story is that in early 2018, I was on a separate farm walk. It was actually just a glass course that we've all done in our time as well, if we participate in glass. And a friend of mine was on the same course. We walked the farm and probably wasn't paying full attention to what what the lecturer was saying. I was telling him about the trip that we had taken to the organic farm. And the truth of the matter is, by the time we got back to base, I had myself convinced that maybe the time was right to go for it. So myself and Alan had the discussion when we came home, and Alan said, yeah, he was prepared for it. Now, he did, of course, intend keeping his job. He was managing a bar at the time. And so I contacted probably yourself, Peter, And yourself and Veronica, my beef advisor, came out. We walked the farm, and you, both of you gave it your blessing. And from there, we made up our farm plan, and the farm plan involved. I was very fortunate that a lot of circumstances was a lot of things came together, I suppose, that made the transition very suitable. So the first thing, of course, we're always told when we get into dairying is, if whatever you're going to invest in, make sure you invest in stock. So it allowed me to buy calves. There's a 2-year transition period into dairying. So I was able to buy calves, just reared calves, with a view to putting them in calf the following year and calving them down 2 years later. So this allowed me to, I suppose, get in. I don't like using the phrase on the cheap, because there's no such thing as getting in on the cheap, but I could source quality stock at a reasonable price. And those stock sourced in 2018, calved down in July and August of 2020, when by that time I had acquired the organic symbol, so that the milk from those calves, even though the calves themselves were conventionally reared, their milk would be accepted as organic milk to the organic standard. I was very pleasantly surprised when we approached Glenisc, because Glenisc, the story is, they seem to be in a position where they can't get enough organic milk. There is a premium price. Certainly you have to abide by all of the standards that any conventional farm has to abide by. Plus, of course, the added layer that for organics. But while we're very happy with what we've been doing, of course, there's no room for, I suppose, in the phrase half-assing anything. So that's basically the story. If there's any more that I've forgotten, or you want to ask any questions, feel free.
I suppose, Thomas, just you also availed of the last, not the current or farming scheme, but basically you joined an organic scheme, and you also got an organic license. So you talked to a body, basically a certification body, and you did up an organic plan. I suppose that's correct to say.
Exactly, we did indeed. We went with the Irish Organic Association. It was called IOFCA then, the Irish Organic Farmers Growers Association. They drew up our plan and inspected, and they were very happy. They won't accept everybody into organics, but they have to inspect your farm just to make sure that your farm is suited to organics. Your soil fertility levels are right, that there's an adequate amount of clover in your swards, because other than that, they may actually tell people, get these things right and come back to us in a couple of years. But when they inspected our farm, they were quite happy as it was.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions coming in, so I'm glad everyone's joined us there now, and we'll put the questions to you. Tom, just have another question there for you, and I suppose it's a 4-part question, so brace yourself. You're after making a lot of changes. I suppose you casually said that you went to dairying, but I suppose you made 4 changes in my mind. You went from beef to dairy, you went from conventional to organic. In dairying, going to dairying, you went from, let's say, not the usual spring calving conventional system, you went to autumn calving as well, with a moderate herd or an average size herd. So you bucked the trend there. And I suppose the last thing was you went into partnership with your son. So I suppose you were he's formally on the bank account now, and he's a decision maker. What sort of things there? What surprised you, basically? Because you probably did all your research, as we can tell. What things surprised you or caught you out, maybe in organics or conventional, or what things kind of caught you on the hop, or what was a challenge, maybe?
To tell you the truth, one of the biggest challenges that I faced was actually making up our minds on the building layout, what kind of developments we were going to go for. Were we going to go for a greenfield setup, or were we going to convert farm buildings? Admittedly, we changed our minds a number of times. The other thing, now these are things, of course, that if a person is getting into conventional dairying, the same questions are there. The other thing would have been, of course, do we go for robot or conventional parlour? And once again, we changed our minds about 3 or 4 times. But I would actually say that they were bigger questions to answer than anything that's to do with organics.
Okay.
I don't think I've run into anything. I don't think I've run into any major difficulties where organic is concerned.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. So look, so Tom, I'm just going to stick with you for a second because there's just a few questions in. So we've kind of we have 3 questions for you, I suppose. Can you describe the way the milk price is for you? If you don't want to describe exact milk price, that's fine, but just maybe describe in general how the milk price works or for you on your farm.
I've no problem. It's public knowledge. I'm sure that Glenisc, if anybody rang Glenisc in the morning to tell what their pricing structure is, their pricing structure basically is at for some years now it has been 37 cent a litre for summer produced milk. But for 5 months of the winter, the price of their price for milk is 60 cent a litre. That 5 months can commence on either the 1st of September or the 1st of November. So we opted for, because of our summer calving pattern, we opted for the premium price from the 1st of September. So we were getting 60 cent a litre up until the 1st of February. Now we're back to the 37 again. I know the 37 doesn't sound all that, it's probably not even above the conventional price right at this moment. But of course, the conventional price is quite high at the moment. Historically speaking, even the price for summer produced organic milk has been more stable than the conventional price.
Okay.
And the other thing not to forget, of course, is that as participants in the organic farming scheme, of course, there's a decent grant there as well.
That brings it into well, there's 2 more follow-on questions. Is how do you bridge the cash flow gap? You might have just mentioned it there as well. You know that there is. I presume that question is reference to the conversion period, although it could also be taken. It could be maybe when you're not producing milk. But I suppose you just answered it there, saying maybe the scheme money. What else from a cash flow point of view have you found to manage the gaps?
Well, the first thing I would say there, of course, is the €220 per hectare grant while you're in conversion is a major help. Was a major help. The other thing is that I think most people asking that question also need to ask themselves the question, what are you actually losing?
Yeah.
The returns from beef, certainly during the period where I'm talking about between 2018 and 2020, the returns from the beef system just, over and above what I was already getting in single payment and loss and the disadvantage payment. I mean, those payments were still there. They weren't touched. So, I mean, I will honestly say I believe even not having beef cattle.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Probably better off.
Okay.
It also allowed me, because of the lower stocking rate, of course, it allowed me as well to build up a reserve of feed. Right this minute, hopefully the winter is coming nearly to a close. But I have next winter's feed already conserved because it's there from 2018, 2019, during the period where I had low stocking rate.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to continue picking on you because there's 2 more questions, but I have questions for the rest of you, so don't panic. 2 questions. One is on cow type. What kind of cow type you went for? And the second question is, how do you handle the high cost of feed, of organic feed? So basically, what's your strategy? What was your strategy on cow type, and what's your strategy on basically winter feeding for milk.
Well, maybe I didn't say it there earlier on that the Glenisks payment structure doesn't involve payment for solids. You're paid on a per litre basis. So I know that what's probably crossing people's minds, but get the most extreme house time that will give you as much milk as they possibly can. No, that's actually not conducive to organic dairying. Organic dairying, the 60% of the cow's feed must come from forage. So at any stage, you're only allowed to feed 40% of the cow's total diet as concentrates. Now, I suppose when you hear the story about the price of organic feed currently is about 540, 550 euro a ton. So you wouldn't be too inclined to be passing that 40%. In my case, I chose for that reason, as most dairy farms, and this applies in both conventional and organic, fertility is one of the most important things, and cow health. Cow health is even more important on an organic farm because naturally, I think most people are aware, you can't use antibiotics willy-nilly. At the same time, of course, nothing is outlawed, providing because everything ultimately is on the recommendation of the vet. But of course, if you use an antibiotic or any other treatments, you have to abide by longer withdrawal periods, naturally enough. But the cow type then is, we'll say there's a large Jersey influence, but my herd is probably 30% Jersey, 70% Holstein.
Okay. So basically, look, EBI plays an important role when you're selecting your cattle, because basically it allowed you to identify cattle that are potentially fertile cattle, healthy cattle, and also milk production. So look, we're coming up tight in time, so I need to switch over. So Tom, thanks for that. There was just a final question there. What once a day or twice a day? You're currently twice a day milking, but you probably will go to once a day when you come towards the drying off period, like as is commonplace, but it's twice a day milking at the moment.
Well, maybe for a short period before drying off, we'll go back to once a day. But of course, with payment per litre, it's important to maximise output. But once again, you did ask about feed there. The cows are calved 8 months, and at the moment, I think I've fed about 600 kilograms, 650.
Okay.
The maximum input during the winter months was 4 kilos a day of dairy milk. They're back to 2 kilos now, and they're accessing grass for a few hours every day.
Okay, so that probably answers Bernard's question there. So look, thanks, Tom. So back over to Enda and John. There was a question there, and it was just about how much land you planted, and is that how did it supplement your income? So it's just about I suppose how much land are we talking about that you planted? Was the question.
Yes, well, as we speak, we have 180 acres under afforestation, and it was very much a staggered pattern. As I mentioned earlier, we planted just 12 acres in the 80s, which has since been fully clear-felled and harvested. And then we bought land and planted 43 acres in 96, and we continued. That was all with Sitka spruce and some broadleaves. And then in 2014, before the grants were sort of reduced to 15 years from 20, we got in before that, we planted 125 acres in 2014. But we have the 43 acres I mentioned there, we have twice thinned that. So we've had income coming in along there, and in about 10 years' time, we plan to clear-fell, to fully harvest that. And the bigger plantation then that we established in 2014, we have that was spruce, and the regulations have changed a little bit. There are some broadleaves by the roadside and that. We have about 14 years of that grant remaining, which, as you know, is a tax-free income. Does that answer your question, Peter?
Perfect. And I've got another question for you there is, can you talk about the diversity of plants in your garden? Why did you choose the type of plants you used? Is a question from...
Yes. Well, I suppose to begin, the very first thing to be considered there would be your aspect, your soil type, your is it sheltered? Is it exposed? Is it acidic? What's the pH and all of that? So I don't agree. I don't believe in, challenging nature. So I plant. I have different soil types and different areas that are sheltered and more exposed than one thing and another. And another big point I would have considered would be, enhancing the site that our house is on. Our house it's very, rural. We have a long approaching avenue, and we have mature trees, and we have stud railing. And so parts of the garden look out into the open landscape. And because of that reason, I don't have any formal planting because I want it to look comfortable within the landscape, and we have a view of the Slieve Blue Mountains in the distance. So I, through my studying horticulture, and indeed which evolved following my interest in floral art and art in general, I choose plants that gave me different shapes and different textures and different seasons of flowering. So I'm very conscious of color and combining colors that enhance each other, color harmonies, color contrasts. And as I stated earlier, we have all sorts of diversity there too. And we have woodland, which is probably one of my favorite areas because it's all so natural. And we have quite a lot of red squirrels at the moment and wonderful bird life. But the plant collections, I collect various plants. I attend plant fairs, some rare plant fairs, and have a lot of friends and colleagues now in the horticultural industry and in just. Okay. I'm a plantaholic.
Very good.
So
could be worse.
Of various plants that I enjoy.
Brilliant. So we're literally the last 30 seconds. So thanks for that, Enda. So Kevin, you end up with the last word. Just one question there. Do you use hydroponics, or have you looked at hydroponics? The question there.
Hydroponics, Peter.
Hydroponics. Sorry. Yeah. Tell us, away you go, Kevin.
No, we don't. No, we are growing in peat and fertigate. So peat is the medium. Now, with the way things are going, hydroponics probably the way of the future. But no, we're not set up for that at all.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that's all our questions there. So look, we're just on 12 o'clock, folks. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for those who are viewing us, and also thanks to our speakers, our panelists. I apologize to start to end. Apologies for technical. That's on me. You had a great presentation, but look, be assured that everyone could see the pictures at home there. So you did yourself justice there. Thanks to Kevin and Michael, and thanks to Thomas there. Who flew solo there. What I'll say to you there is, if you've got any more questions, basically there is fact sheets on the website where you're registered about today's enterprises, and there is also a good resource on organics if you look at Teagasc/organics. Next week, Barry Caslin will be doing a webinar on ag technologies and digitalization in the ag industry, so you can get it at the same place, same times. But for now, I'll just once again thanks the Phelans. I suppose just by thanking the Phelans, I thank everyone here, and thanks again for those tuning in at home. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pete.
Bye bye.
All right, Pete.